Good morning and welcome to this session of the Data Doctor. Today we're going to talk about parameters. I've seen a lot of questions recently on the forum and also on social media about parameters, just what they are and how they work and how they can be used. So today we're going to take a deep dive into parameters. First, we're going to take a look at how you would set them up. And then we're going to look at a lot of use cases and in different ways of using parameters. They're really they add an awful lot of capability to your workbooks. Let's start with what the parameter is. Parameter is simply a way that a user can input a value into Tableau, and that value is one single value. It's not a range of values, it's not multiple values, it's a single value. And that value is going to remain the same until it's manually changed by the user. And you can do that by either directly through a drop-down or through a parameter action. The value cannot be changed dynamically. It cannot be made dependent on another calculation. It has to be changed manually. The parameter value is also global. It's the same value throughout the entire workbook, and you can use it as many times as you want in that workbook. Now, when you create a parameter, the drop-down list can be changed as you update the workbook, or you open up the workbook, or actually update the workbook. You can change the drop-down list, and you can change the initial value. But the important thing about parameters is they don't do anything. The parameter is simply a value that has to be used in a calculation or a filter, and it's that calculation or filter that actually does the work. Let's take a look at parameters and how they're created. You can create a parameter directly, and we're going to create one here in just a second by keying in the values, or you can create a parameter directly from a dimension or from multiple dimensions. Let's go ahead and create a parameter here. And we're going to key this one in. We're going to do it manually. I open up this little down arrow, create parameter, and a window is going to open up. And we can name this parameter. We're going to call this just a test parameter. On region. Now we select the type of parameter, and this data type is very important. The data type that we use here on the parameter has to match the data type in the calculation or in the filter where we're going to use to back up this parameter. And in this one, we're going to use a string or text, and I'm going to key in a list. And we're going to call this East, West, Central, and South. Now you notice when I do that, there's two columns of data. The column on the left is the value, and that's the value that Tableau is going to use, and you're going to use in your formula, or you're going to use in a filter. And the value on the right is the display as value. That's what the user is going to see when we show the parameter. And these two things don't have to be the same. For example, we can call this coast, for example. But the value that Tableau is going to look for is this value East. Okay, so now I'm going to save this parameter. And at this point, all we've done is create the parameter. We haven't used it, and we don't know how to use it right now. But there's two parts that have to be done. One, we have to show the parameter. We need a way to change the parameter. And we're going to do that here. Here's our test parameter. I want to drag it over here. It's a little easier to see over here. And quite honestly, I like to use radio buttons. A parameter can only have a single value at one time. So radio buttons work very well, and you're able to select directly from a radio button, but that option's up to you. So the parameter's not doing anything. We need to use it in a filter or a calculation, and I'm going to make a calculation here, and this is going to be our region true-false filter. Okay, and all we're going to say is that the region is going to equal the test region parameter. And that's either a true or a false value. And when the value is true, we want to set it to true. When the value is true, we see that we see the filter is applied, and we're only looking at this case, the Western region, the East region, the Central region, or the South region. Very simple, very easy to use. Now, I promise you, you're not going to watch me try to type in formulas all day, okay? I want to go to this next value, and this is a little bit easier way to create a parameter. You can create it directly from the dimension. I can go to the dimension itself, right-click on the dimension, or open it up, create parameter. And Tableau will create the parameter for us. It gives it a name. It's a region parameter. It selects the name from the dimension. It knows that this data type is string, so it sets the data type to string, and it loads all the values directly. Okay. We can also add to this list, and many people would like to be able to see all the values at once. So we can add a value for all. Okay. Now we can use the parameter. We can use the parameter and add it to the list. We're going to show the parameter. And once again, I want to bring it over at this point, and you can see we've got East, Central, South, West, and all as our options. Now, I want to create a calculated field to use as a filter. And once again, we're going to come back. This field has to result in a true or false. It's a Boolean type calculation. And here, what we're going to do, just like we did before, the region equals the region parameter, the one we just created, or the region parameter equals all. And now when we add that to our filter shelf and filter it for true, we can see now if we're in the East region, and I want to make this radio buttons again. I just like using them. The East region, Central region, South region. If I select all, we see all 4 regions. So real easy to use, real easy to see all the values. Very difficult to do that with a filter. Or you can see each region independently. Now there's a few other things that we can do in creating parameters. I wanted to create a category parameter, and let's start at the beginning here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to select product, and I'm going to select create parameter. And once again, it's a string parameter, and it's automatically loaded with all the categories. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to add all the subcategories to this list also. And I can do that by opening up add values from subcategories. You can see now I've got all 17 subcategories, and I've also got the 3 values for the categories. And we can put those directly into our parameter, and we're going to show that parameter. We go show parameter, and you can see the parameter that we can choose from are the 3 categories and the 17 subcategories. Now, I'd like to filter this. I'd like to add a filter. Once again, it's got to be a true false filter or a Boolean filter, that the category is going to equal this category parameter, or the subcategory is going to equal the category parameter. And it's going to allow us to drill down into our data. And let's just put, we're going to put sales up here. Okay. And we can see here, when we look at the category, subcategory level, we're looking at furniture, and we see each of the subcategories. We can change this to look at office supplies. We can look at technology, but if we wanted to look at a single subcategory, for example, we could look at binders, and our parameter is driving our visual, so that we're seeing the category and the subcategory based on the parameter value. We can go back and see furniture, and we can see all categories. Very useful. It gives you the ability to place in the hands of the person viewing your your dashboard, a way to drill down into data. Very easy to do. There's some other things we can do with this, obviously. We can do the same sort of parameter on maps. And I really like to do this on maps. Here we look at maps, and we can look at the eastern region, the central region, the southern region, for example. Okay. And we can look at all regions. Okay. So it's an easy way to let your user navigate maps. Now, if you remember a few weeks ago or a few months ago, we took a look at how to use the condition tab and the top end tab on filters and sets, and they work the same way. Whatever I'm going to show you here for on filters or on sets, you can use on either one of them. And I'm going to show you how you can use a parameter in the top end tab. And then I'm also going to show you how we can use it on the condition tab. We can drop a parameter in here. Let's look first at what we've done. I want to create a parameter for this actual value for the top end. And if all it is a simple integer parameter, we're going to take any values. And I happen to set it at 4 right now, so it's set at 4. We can then come back and we can take a look at the subcategory filter that we've got here. We're going to edit the filter itself. And it says select from list, but we're going to go out to the top end, this tab right here, top end. And we're going to use the top, and the field that we're going to use is this parameter value. So right now this is set to 4. And we know this works because if we look over here at the filter and we list the filter, we can see all the values here, and then it's limited to the top 4 values by the sum of sales. We could use profit, we could use anything else in here, but I elected to use this based on the sum of sales. And now when we change the value of this parameter to like 6, now we're looking at the top 6, and you can see the top 6 over here, and you can see 6 values. Okay. Now we can work with sets, and I created a set here, and I want to show you how I created that set. And this set is based on a parameter value, and we're going to come back. It's that same parameter we've been using before with the region, with the 4 regions, and also the value of all. But we're going to put that in here on the condition tab by this formula. If you remember, we talked about this box before being just like a fixed LOD. It needs to be aggregated, and you can't use ATTR in there. And it has to return a Boolean. It has to return true or false. So we can look at this, and we can say, well, the minimum region equals region, or region equals all. Okay, and that's the filter that we're going to apply here. And when we do that, I want to take that out of there. And when we do that, and we look at the regions that we've got there, there's a central region, there's a southern region, and there's the eastern region. Now you're probably saying to yourself, hey, Jim, you just did that with a filter. Why are you doing it with a set? Well, we did it with a set because sets can be used for a lot of different things. And here's an example where we're using the set to create proportional brushing. We take a look at the amount of sales in the region, and in this case, it's the eastern region, compared to all the sales across all regions, and what's out of the region is in gray here. And then I've just done this as a percent of total. So we can look in the eastern region, and in the eastern region, furniture, for example, is 28% of the total. In the central region, furniture is 21% of the total. In the western region, it's 35% of the total. And of course, if we selected all, it would be 100% of the total. So we did that by creating a set, and that set was based on the parameter value. And we put that in as a condition. Well, let's take a look at some of the other things that we can do with parameters. First, we can use it to control what your user sees on the visit cell. We can control the sort direction, or we can do a sheet swap using a parameter. A very easy way to do a sheet swap. I'm going to show you an example. If you're not familiar with it, it adds a lot of flexibility in how you present different types of information to your user. And then we can use the parameter with a value picker and a parameter action to actually change the visit cell. Let's take a look at the sort direction. First of all, here, the first thing we did is we created a parameter. It's just a string parameter again, and we're either going to sort ascending or descending. Okay. And then I created a formula based on ranking, either ascending or descending. Now, what I really wanted to do, but you can't do, is I wanted to just take that parameter value, that ASC that we've got in this parameter, and drop it right in there, but Tableau won't let you do that. So what we have to do is we have to write a case statement. And the case statement is based on the parameter itself. And when that value is ASC for ascending, then we do a rank unique in ascending order, or we do it in a descending order if it's not, because there's only two options available. So right now we're ranking descending. And when we change this value, we rank ascending, and now we're looking at ascending. Now, you might want to also put a limit on this where we only want to see certain values. And we'll just add a true false filter here. Okay. So now what we've done is we got values ascending, and we're only looking at the top. We're only looking at the first 5 values. So we're looking at the bottom 5 values. If we sort descending, we're looking at the top 5 values. Once again, have users come in and say, you know, I'd really like to be able to do that. I'd like my user to have the ability to only look at the top 5 values, and I want to see it, give them also the option to do it ascending or descending. Very often we'll have users come in and they say, well, I want the user to be able to select the measure that they see on the worksheet. We're going to use that same process here to create a parameter. It's going to be a string parameter again. And now we're going to look at 3 different measures: sales, quantity, and profit. Okay. And they're going to be displayed as sales, profit, sales, quantity, and profit. I'm going to change that into a radio button. And now here, the measure to show is a different type of calculation, but it's that same type of case statement. When this parameter value equals sales, then show sales. When the parameter value equals profit, then show profit. When it's quantity, show quantity. Okay. So now when we change the value of the parameter to sales, quantity, and profit. And you can see what I've done. I've included that in the title. And yes, you can include, we're going to edit the title right here. And you can see that the parameter value measures to show is included in the title. And you just do that by dropping this down here. And you can select what you want to show. And we just selected the measure to show parameter so that it's provides a little more information. Okay. Something that comes up relatively frequently. Users want their user or somebody looking at their dashboard or worksheet to actually change the level of the date, and they want to be able to see different date levels. I'm only going to show you 2 levels here, but it's the same idea again. We're using the same thing. We're going to use a string parameter. We created a string parameter, and I've got 2 values in here: year and quarter. And here I'm going to create a calculation. And once again, it's based on a case statement. When the parameter value is quarter, then I want to take a look at, I want to use the date trunk of the quarter. And when it's based on the year, I want to use the date trunk of the year. And this could be months, and it could go down to days. It could go down to a lot of different levels. But I'm just showing year and quarter here. Now, when we create the viz, on columns, we've got the date, but it's very important that we start by using the exact date and then making it discrete. Okay, so we're looking at the discrete continuous date, if you will. Okay, so I can look at it, the data at the quarter level, or I could look at the data on the year level just by changing the parameter. Okay. And one of the real fun things to do with parameters is a sheet swap. And sometimes it's easier just to show you where we're going than to try to explain it in words. Where we're going to end up is this block here is now dependent on a parameter value. And when I change that from bars to a map, the view is going to change. And this gives you all kinds of flexibility to show your user, let your user select between different views, and you can have a different message that goes along with those different views. Let's take a look at how this is done. I want to start over here on bars, and I have to create 3 worksheets, one for bars, one for maps, and one for lines. And in there, I'm also going to have a parameter. The parameter, same type of parameter we've been using. It's going to be a string parameter, and I'm just going to use bars, maps, and lines. I know some people will use, like, they'll put a value in here, like a number, like a value 1, and then the display will be bars, and number 2, and the display will be maps. I like to use the words because 6 months from now, when I come back and I look at this thing, it's easier for me to remember what I did. Just that simple. But you do you do things the way that you'd like to do it. I'm just going to use bars, maps, and lines for the value. And then on my worksheet, I've created a bar map, or horizontal bar map. It's just subcategory and profit. And I take a look here, and for each one of these sheets, I create a true false filter, a Boolean filter, just like we've done before. And when this parameter is bars, it's going to return a true. And I just have this set to true. And I've done that here on the custom value list. I only want true. I don't want it to select from a list or anything. Set it to true. So when the value of the parameter is bars, it's true. If it's anything else, it's false. And when it's anything else, this sheet goes blank. There's no data. Tableau returns a null, and that's what you see. Now, I just changed this to map. Let's look over at the map. Well, the filter on maps, same type of filter, except when the parameter value equals map, return a true. So I get a true value here. Okay. And you guessed it, we did the same thing over here on the lines. And we come over here on lines, and when the value is lines, we can see the lines. Well, that's fine, but how do we go about creating the sheet swap? Well, there's 2 parts to it, and I'm going to make one here for you. Let's create a new dashboard, and I'm going to drag out a container. This is a vertical container, and I want our bars, our maps, and our lines to all be in the same container. And I don't really want to see this, so let's get rid of that. And instead of that being on a handle over here, let's just put it on top. So now when I change this, our filters take over. See bars, where we see the map. Now what I don't like is we see these headers out here, and they're creating a space in the chart. Let's get rid of the headers by just hiding them. Hide the title on these 3. And now the parameter drives this sheet swap. Now, there's other ways of doing sheet swaps. This isn't the only way, but this is probably the easiest way, and it's a way that I like to use quite a bit. I've got one more example to show you. And once again, this is probably easiest to show you how to do a parameter action by showing you the result and then showing you how we got there. I've got just two charts here. One is this text table where we look by region, and we're taking a look at year-over-year sales data. It's just a typical period over period sales data. And it's driven by a parameter. The end date is driven by a parameter. And then I created a value picker. And I can go up to this value picker and I can select a end date on the value picker. And you can see our charts changing as I select different end dates. Okay. Well, let's see how we went about doing this. And I'm going to start here by looking at the calculation of the text table itself. And we start by using a just a simple parameter based on date. That's all we've got here is a simple parameter based on date. And we're using all values in there. And then you've seen this parameter before or you've seen this calculation before, where all we're doing is looking to see if the year of the order date is the same as the year of the parameter, and the month of the order date is equal to or less than the month of the parameter. And if so, return sales. And then we use an LOD to sum those sales, and that's our current year. And then the prior year is the same idea. All we've done is use a date function, date add, to look 1 year earlier than the value that's been picked in the parameter. So the prior year on that same order date, the years have to match up, and the months are less than or equal to the order date. And then we do just a very simple calculation to calculate the year-to-date growth. When I did it as an LOD, and some people will say you don't have to, but I like to use LODs. So I dropped it in there, and it plays its part later in some more advanced calculations. And then the value picker is just a very simple bar chart. It's just a vertical bar chart. I just put a value of 1, min 1, for each of the months of order date. And then I used an index to on color to create this gradient, or this color gradient. And once again, this is a discrete version of the continuous month field. It's real important to do that. Take the continuous month field and then convert it to discrete. And we end up with what you see here. Now, there's one more thing we have to add to this dashboard, and that's a parameter action. Parameter action you get by going to the dashboard, opening up action, and we can see I've already created it here. Let's edit it so that we can see what it looks like. We can give it a name, and all this tells us to do is I'm going to pick a value off this thing called value picker, which is that chart that we just made. It's going to be based on select. And when I pick that value, the mark value, if you will, change the value of the parameter value picker, month of order date, change it, and use the aggregation of minimum. And that's all it takes for us to be able to give our user the option of picking a mark on the dashboard and using it to change a parameter value. Well, I hope you learned a lot about parameters today. I like using them. I know some people, I'll get questions all the time. I don't want to use a parameter, and I don't really understand that. It's one of the functions available in Tableau, and it provides a lot of flexibility and gives you a lot of different ways to go. My advice would be to use them, try them, see where they work, see how you could use them in different, on your next analysis of your next workbook. All that you have seen today is already out on my blog. Go out to jimdehner.com. The latest post out there, or you can search under parameters, covers what we just covered today. This workbook is downloadable from my Tableau public site, and these are all linked together. If you go to my blog, you can just go out to my Tableau public site and you'll see it out there. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you again next month.